Welcome to episode 70 of the We Don't Know Jack podcast. Emily, we have a big one today.
We do.
This is our biggest episode ever. Our biggest guest, he's the most well-known guest, biggest name, former WWE superstar Donovan Dijak. Welcome to the show, Dijak. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
We're super excited. I'm super excited to talk to you. I've been waiting all week for it. I've been waiting around. I'm so excited to talk to you today. You're the first we've had that's worked for WWE, so this is really cool to get to talk to you today.
Very cool. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So we met a few weeks ago at a Glory Pro show in St. Louis. Have you wrestled a lot in St. Louis?
That's a good question. I'm sure I did when I was with WWE. I don't remember doing it because, like, when you're on the main roster and you're traveling all around, it all just kind of blurs together. NXT had a lot of live events that traveled as well. So maybe I wrestled there for one of those, and probably when I was on Monday Night Raw for 2 years. But yeah, I don't recall. I do recall my last time with Glory Pro, which was against a friend of mine, Naomichi Marufuji, which was a tremendous match for me back in 2016. So
Wow.
I was super excited to be able to come back to the area.
That was a good match, cool match too. I haven't seen it, but I've heard really good things about it, and that was a big talking point at
Yeah,
the last show.
I think it's free on YouTube if I'm not mistaken. It's one of the 150 or so matches that are of mine that are free on YouTube. So it's definitely a good one to check out, especially if you want to see some of my pre-WWE stuff back when I was a little more nimble.
You could fly. I watched one of your pre-WWE matches yesterday, and you're a giant. You're 6'7", right?
I am, yeah.
How do you move like that?
Well, I'll say used to move like that. I can still do pretty much everything that I used to be able to do, but now it's just a little bit, just a hair slower, just a hair. I don't get quite as far off the ground as I used to. We're trending there. I'm still plenty athletic, but it's we're getting there. We're definitely on the back nine of the career. My athleticism comes from football and basketball mostly. Those are my two big sports coming up. So all the jumping and sort of flipping that you see, that's rooted in basketball. I mean, there's no flipping in basketball, but that was like jumping into my pool basically, or jumping on a trampoline. That's kind of where I figured that part of it out. But in terms of the lateral movement and the quickness and the speed bursts and stuff like that, it's mostly football and basketball.
It's wild the stuff I've seen clips of you doing. I don't know how you could. I can't do that. I'm a full foot shorter than you, but I'm super unathletic. There's a reason I talk and not wrestle.
Yeah, it's just a lot of it is just I tried it one day and it worked, right? Like one day I tried a shooting star press and it didn't work, so I don't do that. One time I tried I've never once, this is a fun fact that I don't tell a lot of people. I've never attempted a suicide dive because it just scares the hell out of me,
Really?
which is interesting because that's like one of the most common and like basic dives, like it's like the go-to for people who aren't really that athletic. They know for sure that they can just run and jump in a straight line. That whole situation of going through the ropes just scares me to death. I feel like my knees or my feet are going to catch on it and I'm just going to face plant into the ground. So I've never even tried it.
I don't blame you on that one. I saw you do a corkscrew moonsault off the top rope to the outside at the in the PWG match with Keith Lee, and you don't like suicide dive. That's interesting. That's you would think it would be way scarier
Yeah.
corkscrew moonsault to the outside.
There's something about the concept of my feet like uh heading towards the ground first that comforts me. The other way, like I don't like anything where I'm coming this way or this way, right? But if my feet are coming down, I'm all for it. As you saw, right? Did a springboard off the top and did a corkscrew and came down. It was wild, but I knew that like at least the bottom half of my body is like trending downward. So I can rely on myself. If it's the other way and I have to pray that people are catching me, I get very concerned about that. So I usually trend towards feet down as much as I can.
You're a big guy too, so that should.
Not that I dive all that much anymore. Like I still can. I just choose not to because I don't know. I don't. feel like there's an appropriate time to do it. I don't even remember the last like backflip dive I did to the outside. Maybe against Wes Lee in my the Vengeance Day match from 2.5 years ago now. Maybe it might have been then.
Really? Wow. Was that a big part of your moveset pre WWE doing the high fly and stuff?
Oh, yeah, almost every match.
Really?
If it was a possibility and it was on the table, I probably pitched it and did it. Yeah, I loved the Fosbury flop. I loved the Asae moonsault. I liked the springboard tornillo to the outside. If the other guy even mentioned it, I was happy to do it. If the promoter mentioned it, I was happy to do it. If they didn't mention it, I usually brought it up myself. I was just all for it. It was relatively easy for me. I knew that I was landing on my feet, so I could just roll off and roll out of it. It didn't hurt all that much. It got a huge reaction everywhere I went. It usually got like "please come back" chants and stuff, and that was my goal, was to get noticed and to get rebooked, booked again. So and sometimes it succeeded, sometimes it didn't, but that was my path anyway.
You can't do much better than a please come back chant. Those are always cool ones to hear.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference when you're doing something to the outside if there's mats on the ground or not?
Oh yeah. Yeah, big time. WWE's mats were unbelievable, so easy to land on. I would There's also that you can find this in 2022. I was on Monday Night Raw full time, and I didn't have, actually, yeah, 2022. So from January until I was moved to NXT, I think in September or October. So that whole 8 or 9 month span, I was only on Monday Night Raw twice. I was on the show Main Event a lot, but I was only on Monday Night Raw twice. The first time was a squash match. Omos squashed me, and the second time was a battle royal, and I was eliminated from the battle royal from Ricochet, and I took a head scissors on the apron. I did a front flip off the apron to the floor and just landed right on my back, and it didn't really hurt at all. It looks like this horrible, devastating bump, and it doesn't feel great, but it at the same time it was like, in terms of the show I was on and the importance of the spot, I felt like it was totally feasible to take that sort of bump. It was actually the second time I took a bump off the apron from him. The first time I did hurt myself because it was back when I was a lot heavier. I don't remember what he did. This was when I was in the mask. So I was a lot bigger when I was in the mask as T-Bar, and it might have been that same head scissors. I don't remember, but I took the same front flip bump off the apron. But this time I was so big that my legs didn't go where they wanted. So I
Oh,
ended up like kind of like kneeing myself in the face. Like my body like bent, so I like sandwiched myself, and I ended up pulling my hamstring really bad because I was just so big and unathletic at that time. So yeah, that's my fun Ricochet bumps off the apron on Monday Night Raw stories, I guess.
that just sounds painful. I walk up the stairs and I'm out of breath, or I step out of bed and my leg hurts. What's the most painful bump you've taken?
Wow, that's a great question. There's a few that come to mind. The first one was a belly to back off the top rope from Matt Taven,
Oh,
former Ring of Honor world champion, at in Bethany, Connecticut for Northeast Wrestling. We were having a street fight or like a Texas death match or something, and I think I accidentally moved a chair like into the position where I was supposed to take this bump, and he gave me this big belly to back off the top rope, and the spine of the chair just went straight up my spine, and my hands like went numb for a second. I was like, oh, that feels horrible, but at least I can like feel all my extremities. And I was much younger back then. I was in my 20s, so I recovered quickly. I don't even think I felt it. Another one was for a company called Blitzkrieg, where I did a dive off the top rope to the floor, but this was onto like a marble ballroom floor.
oh,
Yeah, not the WWE bump, and much higher and much, it just splat. I felt my pelvis dislocate, which is a horrible feeling. I don't think anyone ever wants to feel that, to the point where I couldn't walk to my car after the show. And then from that point on, like rotating, like my spinning big boot never looked the same ever again because my hips just weren't aligned properly. But I did recover, and I was able to walk and wrestle and stuff eventually after that. And then I've had a few more since then. I took a Canadian destroyer off the top rope against Mustafa Ali on a main event, which we did not. We were uh, encouraged not to do that anymore after we did it. That's the nicest way I can put that. And yeah, I landed on the top of my head, so that didn't feel great. And then since I've left WWE, the worst bump I took was a German suplex where I think I'm not sure, but I took a German suplex, and I usually like to do like an inside out bump on the German suplex where I basically do a moonsault. And for whatever reason, I didn't get all the way around. So I landed like on the back of my head. And then I was like, oh, that pretty much kills my spine. But I've knock on wood, I've never had any sort of major injuries from like wrestling in the ring. The worst thing I've ever had is a torn meniscus, which wasn't even from a bump. It was from getting up. So it was kind of a lame story.
It's always
Uh,
how that works.
yeah, that's the most major, again, knock on wood, injury that I've had in a pro wrestling match.
You've been wrestling 15 years. That's impressive to not have been hurt like that. You mentioned T-Bar a little bit. Let's get into that a little bit. Retribution as a whole. How did that come about? Were you always the plan for that? What was the plan going forward? How did you become a part of Retribution?
Um, yeah, we were not the plan originally. I remember the sort of tweet. It's a big long story on the whole pandemic timeline and going to NXT and Raw and back and forth and all that stuff. Everyone was kind of in this weird sort of shifting around thing. But long story short, the Retribution like vignettes started, and the stuff that they were doing at the performance center, which of course I was available for because we were all stuck in Orlando, and I was even like part of the crowd on Raw. So had they wanted to use us for those initial things, like I don't know if you remember, but the first thing Retribution did was like throw a Molotov cocktail at a
Yeah.
generator. Everybody like celebrated or whatever.
So that was the time I had just started watching wrestling,
Yeah,
the pandemic era.
none of those people were wrestlers. There clearly wasn't a plan for who they wanted to do it. I think that they just wanted to do it. They being Vince. I think it was Vince's idea. As far as I know, I was never told otherwise. And then yeah, after a few weeks of that, I basically pitched myself and a few other people to Vince to sort of fill and populate that stable with wrestlers because they didn't have wrestlers. And he either had me in mind already or listened to my pitch, I don't know which. And then all of a sudden they were plugging us in as like the sort of masked people, the masked anonymous people. They start plugging us in those spots. So like, for example, if for whoever's familiar with this, which I assume is almost nobody at this point, but it was very like viral and popular at the time, just because it was so visually like stunning to see all these masked people like coming out of the crowd and all that stuff. So it did really big numbers on YouTube. There was a segment where like we chucked Dominic Mysterio across the ring and like threw Rey Mysterio into a post. That was me and Brennan Mace, whatever his name is now in in AEW. And then there was another one where we confronted the Hurt Business. That was us in that. There was another one where we beat up Braun Strowman on the debut of the Thunderdome. So yeah, there was a lot of that stuff. And then we weren't like sure that it was going to be us because really you could have pulled us at any time. We were just people in masks. So you could have replaced us with anyone. So we weren't really sure that we were in the group until we did the big reveal with the also masks, but now they were like kind of personalized masks and we had like actual names and stuff. So yeah, that was kind of how it trended into being us, and that's how we populated the idea.
Do you think Ali was always planned as the leader of that group, or was that a? coming
I
together at
don't,
the end thing.
again, I was never told 100%. I heard rumors that he was not, and I heard rumors that maybe Finn Balor was supposed to be the leader, and then he got moved to NXT. You got to remember, this is mid to late 2020. So this is like everything changes
Yeah.
every week between people being sick, but between people leaving the company, people were getting fired, people were shifting brands all the time. It was every week was different, right? Like so there was just so much volatility in the company at that point. So or certainly in the the talent portion of it. So yeah, it was kind of the the Wild West, so to speak, just in terms of like where you are and what your purpose is and things like that. But yeah, I know for sure because I know Ali very well. We're friends, and we talked yesterday. I know for sure that he didn't find out until that day.
Wow.
That we didn't find out until that day either. So if they knew before that, they didn't tell any of us. Um, and quite frankly, I'm guessing that they probably didn't know before that. Uh, and again, because a lot of this was kind of, figured out the day up. And I'm not blaming them for that, right? It's
Right.
the, this is the COVID-19 pandemic, like right in the heart of it. So like everyone was doing that, right? Like everyone in their jobs and their life, we were all just taking it day by day. So I understand it to a certain extent. But yeah, that's just kind of what happened, and we were like, okay, we like Ali, that's cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, 2020 was a weird time in wrestling. So I started watching my first match I ever watched live was Adam Cole and Pat McAfee take over 30. So like right
Yeah,
in the middle, and then the next week
sure.
Roman came back on SummerSlam. So that
Yeah,
was my
it
first
was.
exposure to wrestling, and I would hear all the time things, the creative plans change like day to day. I
Yeah.
thought that was normal because that's just all I ever heard, and then I hear things are different now.
We were on that SummerSlam. We were I don't remember if we did something on the show, but we were there. We were physically there at the building. So yeah, that was definitely wild and unique. The Thunderdome experience was completely just surreal, right? It's very surreal being like one of, you know, let's call it 50 people in the entire building because it's a skeleton crew, right? Because of they don't want people near each other and only so many people can be in the room. Everyone's wearing masks and stuff. So in terms of what the normal availability for Monday Night Raw was, this is SummerSlam, so it's dialed back even more, right? Because not everybody needs to be there. So it's probably only like 15, maybe 20 wrestlers. And then in terms of production, there's, a few cameramen, a few people working the truck, Vince and Gorilla, Bruce and Gorilla, a handful of producers, and that's it. So we're
Wow.
all just kind of milling around, and then all of a sudden, like Roman Reigns comes out of nowhere. It's like, where has he been? And quite frankly, the way the Amway Center was uh, kind of structured at that point, the locker room was basically a 30-second walk from the arena. So like we literally could just like take off our boots and like walk out the door and just stand in the doorway and watch SummerSlam, and we're the only ones in the arena. So it was pretty surreal in that aspect. So like we saw, Roman come out and we're like, oh, okay. So we'd like poke our heads out and we're watching like SummerSlam and watching the title changes and stuff. We're like, this is wild, right? This is just the complete Wild West. Yeah, definitely a unique experience that I can pretty much assure that no one else is ever going to experience before or ever again.
I hope not.
Yeah,
That's not really the kind of
I mean,
experience.
yeah,
It's
like even if a
cool,
pandemic happens again,
right?
it's not going to boil down to the Thunderdome. I mean, maybe I don't know. Yeah, I guess anything's possible, but
How
certainly a unique experience.
how weird was it wrestling with nobody in the building, like being in the ring?
So I guess what you missed. Well, I don't remember. I don't remember. Did they have like wrestlers there for that Adam Cole Pat McAfee match?
I think so, but
Yeah.
it was
So
like
so
performance
the
center
so
new
the
trainees.
yeah the progression of how it went was, February, March, whatever, the thing happens, right? And the whole United States shuts down, but WWE wants to keep going. So, like, it's week one. They wanted nobody in the build. Like, literally, we had no fans. You can go look this stuff up. Like, if you look up, uh, I don't even know what it would be under, but it's a triple threat. It's me versus Keith Lee versus Damian Priest. There's probably highlights of it online, and it's quote unquote a takeover, but it like because that's what the takeover match was supposed to be for WrestleMania. But
That was Great American Bash, wasn't it?
I don't believe that was Great American Bash. I think Great American Bash was where Keith won the championship
That's
from
right.
Adam Cole, and there were fans there for that. The fans were the wrestlers. The triple threat, we didn't have anyone. It was literally wrestling in silence. Um, So yeah, it's wrestling in front of literally nobody in front of silence is is awful. It's one of the worst experiences of my life. And those guys are my good friends and I love wrestling them. And on paper, that should be one of my favorite matches of all time. It's probably my least favorite match because it was pain. Everything in pro wrestling is predicated around like interaction, right? Interacting with the audience, interacting with the cameras, the announce, all this stuff, and we had none of it. It was literally just us in a ring smashing each other with like a cameraman standing there quietly going like this. It's just awful. It's an awful feeling. So by way of that, once I got in front of like the wrestlers, like the 20 wrestlers with the plexiglass, that felt like heaven. And then once I got the Thunderdome, which was all this fake noise and all these screens watching, I was like, this is even better, right? Because it was trending away from this horrible, horrible silence. And then once we got actual fans back, it was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. So that's kind of the way that it worked.
You can see me there's a match with Carmella and Sasha Banks. You can see me in the top corner. I'm
Oh, you
sitting
got
on
let
the bed. Yeah.
Thunderdome.
I recorded it and I ran it back like 40 times. Like, I know I'm there. I'm gonna find myself. That's
Wait,
pretty
what
funny.
what match was Carmelo versus Sasha Banks? Like an intergender match?
Carmella.
Oh, Carmella. Okay, I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
you were saying Carmelo Hayes. I'm like, I don't even
That'd be
think
an
it's
interesting, that'd be a fun match though. I never thought about that, but that'd be a fun match.
Carmella and Sasha Banks. Yes, that
And then
was in
Reggie was in her
the
corner.
Performance Center Thunderdome, or that was in the Raw and SmackDown Thunderdome.
I'm not sure. I know it was a SmackDown episode. It was, I want to say it was like October of 2020.
Oh, that was when Reggie was doing the
Yeah.
sommelier stuff. Yeah, okay.
He knows somebody I went to school with.
Oh,
I found
definitely.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, I see him all the time. We're on shows together all the time now.
I didn't know he still wrestled too much.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah,
So
he's
let's go back to NXT a little bit. You started out in NXT, you went to the main roster, you went back to NXT. You had two different runs. You were Dijak, and before you were Dominic Dijakovic, right? You had some crazy matches as Dijakovic. You were in the War Games match with the Undisputed Era
yep.
that Kevin Owens ended up being the mystery teammate on. Did you know he was going to be a part of that match?
As of like 4 p.m. that day,
Oh
yes.
wow.
Yeah, we found out real late, real late. Because there was a lot of shifting around because I think what happened was I think Gargano got injured. So if everyone remembers correctly, I'm gonna try to paint this picture. And I could be wrong on all this. I might be misremembering. This was 6 years
7 years
ago.
ago.
So if you've ever seen that clip of people love it. It's the clip where the Undisputed Era is staring down Finn Balor and Gargano and Ciampa, and then Finn Balor does the Pele kick to Gargano, and he drops, and Tommaso's standing there, and then Undisputed Era beats the heck out of Tommaso. Everyone loves that clip. That was actually post match with me and Keith Lee. I think we had like a tag match. So I'm like laying on the ground for that. I'm out there, but like on the ground. And they ran that whole angle. And then I think what happened is Finn gave Gargano a, I think he calls it Bloody Sunday or whatever. It's like a brain buster, but they did it on the ramp for some reason.
Ooh.
And I don't remember if it was a real injury or a pretend injury, but there was some sort of injury angle there. Um, and they needed to remove Gargano from wrestling Finn because it was supposed to be Gargano and Finn, but they needed a replacement to wrestle Finn, so I think they moved Riddle, who was originally scheduled to be on our Team Ciampa for War Games, to wrestle Finn. So that became the singles match, so we needed one more. So we didn't know who that was going to be, and we were trying to plan this match, right? And we don't know who the fourth person is, so we're just kind of like calling vague things and kind of waiting to find out if we can figure out who it is. And there were some rumors that maybe it might be KO, and I think maybe there was a couple of other people that it were on the list, but we never got confirmation until the day of when we got to the venue, and even then it took like a few hours, and then they solidified it with us. They're like, yeah, it's gonna be Kevin, and then we were able to, put together the rest of the match in the 3 hours that we had or whatever. So yeah, it actually came out pretty good, all things considered.
That's a fun match too. That's a fun one to watch, and you're in it for a while.
Everybody's in it for a while. It just
Yeah.
lasts. I didn't there were so many great minds in that match. I think out of everybody, I definitely had the least amount of experience out of all 8 members. So I contributed probably the least to the match. I remember the one idea I did have is that I liked the idea of like saving all the table bumps for like a big, what I referred to as like a waterfall, which is what we ended up using for like the finish of the match, where it's like table bump, table bump, table bump, and then they're on the top and they're teetering back and forth, and then it ends with the big table bump. So that was the construction of how it all went was not me, but just the concept of it, I remember was something that I thought would work well in that position. So that's my small contribution to a big long match.
It turned out great. It's a fun match to watch. Cole does some wild stuff in that match. He does wild stuff in every match, but
A lot. He has a lot of stuff. Yeah.
and then you come back as Dijak in 2023, 2022 or 2020, end of 2022, early 2023.
Yeah, it was the end of 22.
Okay. What was that? What was going back down there? What was that experience like?
It was great. It was great. I was excited for the opportunity. I was excited for the ability to do something that was sort of uh the genesis of which was my concept. So because to that point, like I had been given Dominic Dijakovic, I had been given T-Bar, so I never really got to do something that I like crafted. I didn't craft the whole thing myself. There was a lot of different people contributing, but like the concept and the idea began with me, and then we all built together. So I was really excited about that, and the execution of it was flawless in my opinion. So I was super pumped for the whole opportunity to work with Sean again, and to work with all the performance center coaches that I was familiar with, and then this brand new crop of talent, because it was kind of crazy. I was in NXT in 2020, and then only 2 years later, I'm back in NXT in 2022. But the landscape was dramatically different. Like in terms of the roster from 2020, only 2 years later, there was almost nobody left.
Wow.
Maybe one or two people, I think, were left over from when I was there the first time. So it was dramatically different. So I was excited for that. I really was. And I had quickly, like, what felt like overnight, gone from, as I mentioned, War Games 2019 was at the end of 2019, so basically almost 2020. And I was the youngest guy in that match. And quite frankly, I was one of the younger guys on the entire roster. And then all of a sudden, after 2 years, I came back to NXT. Everyone was different, and now I was the oldest guy on the roster. So it happened like wildly fast. And on Monday Night Raw, I was like one of the youngest guys too, because Raw trended up in the late 30s and 40s, and I was only 33 at that point. So yeah, I was on the much younger side of that. And then it was like all of a sudden it was like boom, 35, and now I'm on NXT where everybody's like 21, and I was like, oh my God, all of a sudden, just like that, I was the oldest, the one of the oldest on the roster. So yeah, it was kind of a culture shock, but it was a lot of fun.
It's wild when that happens. I've had some jobs where I started as the youngest person there, and then I look up and I'm the oldest. It's crazy how time flies. Last
Yeah.
WWE question for you as we start to wind down here. I want to be respectful of your time. Your match with at Stand and Deliver 24, Obafemi, Josh Briggs, and yourself. Talk me through that match. That match is insane. It won Match of the Year for NXT. That match is incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. It was just a big collaborative effort, really, is what it was. We had a good sort of advance notice as to, what the match was going to be and what it was going to look like and what the stakes were going to be, and it had a good build, a good solid build as well, which I appreciated. And then, yeah, there was just a lot of freedom given to us, just in terms of constructing it. Everybody played a part, everybody had a role. Sean helped us with a lot of stuff. Daryl, our referee, helped us with a lot of stuff. Matt Bloom, our agent, helped us with a lot of stuff. So yeah, it was just a big collaborative effort. In terms of the structure of everything, that was a lot of it was my design because I wanted it to highlight what everybody's strengths were, and in Obafemi's case, like literally his strength
He's
was his
so
strength.
strong.
So yeah, my big thing for him is I wanted to figure out a way to show everyone just how strong he was in a unique way. And we spent days, brainstorming different stuff and trying different things, and we couldn't quite get the balance right and the different things. And then finally, my seventh or eighth idea was that what we ended up going with, which was me on his shoulders and Briggs on my shoulders for the Death Valley Driver, that avalanche thing, which was probably, I think it's safe to say that's probably the most memorable part of that match, if not the finishing shot itself with the goozle on the throat. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what the thought process was behind it. I used to hate triple threat matches. I used to think that they were a mess. Now I love the challenge of a triple threat match because it just gives me so many more tools to explore and to be creative with, right? So many times in pro wrestling, people try to break stuff down into like the most comfortable thing they can. So you'll see a triple threat match where they just get rid of one guy and then have a singles match, and then he slides back in, gets rid of another guy, and then they have a singles match because pro wrestlers are comfortable having singles matches. That's what we do all the time. It's what we practice, it's what we train for. So to me, I always took that concept and kind of didn't want to do too much of that. I want to do more stuff where it's like, hey, here's three people all doing things. There's a lot of movement back and forth, and one guy's picking up two guys and stuff like that, right? Because you can't see that in any other match. You can't see that in a singles match. You can barely see it in a tag match. So to me, that's sort of the highlight, and I think that's why that match is so well received because it highlights the things that you normally can't see elsewhere in pro wrestling. I think that's kind of the beauty of it.
There's all kinds of it highlights everything. There's all kinds of wild stuff in that match. I think you get chokeslam from the top rope through the table. I don't know how you flew that far.
That was Josh's idea. Yeah, no, not through the table, onto Oba, who's in the announcer's chair. Uh, Again, super creative spot. Uh, I was happy to take the bump because I trust Oba to catch me because he's strong as hell. So yeah, that was it. It didn't hurt even slightly. It was the most
Oh
comfortable
wow.
done. I've had more painful I've had a more painful time, getting out of bed in the morning than I have taking that bump. So so yeah, it was a very, very, very fun experience.
Last thing I got on this match, there's the part in the match. I think Oba tries to choke slam you, and you counter with a Canadian Destroyer up in the air, and you're like 3 feet over his head, and you fall onto him. And how in the world did you do that?
Yeah, the choke slam into the Canadian Destroyer was with Josh actually. Um, yeah, that one was just it's a trust thing. I pitched it to him. He said absolutely. And we never really practiced it. We he and I have wrestled each other probably we trained together. We trained in the same school at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, so I've known Josh since his first day in the business. So we wrestle each other in training a bunch of times. We wrestle each other in Limitless Wrestling, which is, one of the biggest promotions in New England. Um, we wrestle each other in Chaotic, which is our home promotion. So yeah, I was just familiar with him and he's familiar with me and we trust each other. So we were able to pull off that maneuver. I remember the most difficult part of that match physically was a spot at the end where I needed to get Oba up for my finishing maneuver, which is a torch rack into a GTS. Um, and I'd done so much like running, my legs were on fire, and I had to pick up, whatever he weighs, 280, 300, 320. I have no idea what he weighs. Just a big dude, right? And I had to pick him up on my shoulders. And I remember getting him just barely up there. My legs are screaming at me. They're just burning. And I'm like, and I had the mental thought of, you don't have enough in the tank to do this. And then I had to override that thought and say, well, too bad, because this is what you have to do, so you got to do it. And I ended up getting him over and hitting the spot. And I think that was the one where Briggs pulled the ref on the outside. So then I had to do that. And immediately I'm supposed to get up and do a dive onto Briggs. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't even think I could stand up, much less run and jump over the top rope. But again, I had to override my brain and be like, well, too bad, because that's the spot, so you got to do it.
You landed on your feet on that dive
I
too.
do land on my feet, yeah. And then I fire up and I'm supposed to go around the corner and then there's this whole other run thing and then so there's just a bunch of stuff that like probably looks like I'm Bambi on Jello legs out there, but it got done. So like that's because I train a lot of people now. I have my online wrestling academy where I train people just like this on Zoom classes, and I train at the school at the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. And I tell people all the time because people, students ask me, they're like, what do I do? I keep getting blown up. And I said, it's not about not getting blown up, right? Blown up is the term we use in pro wrestling for I'm too tired to keep going, right? And it happens all the time. You'll talk to a guy and be like, I need a minute, I can't go. And it's like, sorry, you don't have a choice, So to me, when my brain tells me like you're too blown up, you can't keep going, I just figure out a way to override it and say, well, that's too bad, right? There's no such thing as being uh, well enough prepared where you'll never blow up. Because in my opinion, if you never blow up, that means you're not going hard enough. Because there's so many components of pro wrestling that involve like screaming, for example, like it just sucks the wind out of you. So if you're not making enough noise or moving enough or being, showing off your body language and things like that, then you're going to have more energy. But to me, I think all of those things are tremendously important. So I do all of them, and then my body says, nope, you don't have enough left in the tank. But the good part about pro wrestling is that I don't actually have to do anything that like the athleticism is very limited, right? Because like it's not like a football play, right? For example, or a basketball play where if you don't have enough energy, you physically can't do it, right? Because there's a defender that you need to get by or whatever. In pro wrestling, we know where the other person's going to be and we know where we're going to be. We just have to get up and do it. It doesn't matter if it looks good or not. You just have to do it, right? Especially on the back end of a match. So that's what I tell a lot of my students is like, hey, just figure out a way to override your brain and, tell your brain that you don't get a choice. You got to get up and do it. Doesn't matter if it looks good or bad. It just has to happen.
I've always wondered about that, how that would go. That's a great way to put it. Where you just got to you got to mind over matter. You got to tell yourself you're fine and
A
keep.
lot of guys don't. I can't. I've lost count of the amount of times I've been in the ring where I go to pick up a guy and he's like, I need a second, brother," and I'm like, I like get up. Like I don't know what to tell you. I've said it many, many times. Like, bro, you got to get up. Like we're losing the crowd, or we're whatever the circumstances. So that might be the nicest way I put it. Sometimes maybe I'm a lot meaner, but it's situational.
Depending on who it is and where you're at and what you got to
Definitely
do.
depends on who it is. Yeah.
The last thing I got for you, a couple rapid fire questions about your career, if you're okay with that, real quick. Do you have a favorite match of your career?
Yes. Iron Survivor Challenge match from Deadline 2024.
Is that the first Iron Survivor match or the second one? Second one. Okay.
So,
That is a good one. Those Iron Survivor. Sorry, let me try that again. Iron Survivor matches are fun to watch. I love the cluster matches where there's just 50 things going on at once. Like in
again,
AEW, the
so
Anarchy matches, I love them.
so when I first saw the concept for the match, I thought that's too much stuff. There's too many things going on. It's confusing. I don't know the rules. You leave the box, you enter the box, you do all this stuff. And then I watched it and I was like, that's actually pretty interesting, right? This is a cool concept. Um, especially I was super impressed with I think the women had the first one ever. And I remember I was particularly impressed with Kiana James. I thought I think she had a tremendous showing in that first Iron Survivor Challenge match. And then once I found out I was in it, which I was the first one to find out I was in it. So I had like a month to be thinking about this thing, and I had all sorts of ideas because you give me the opportunity to present stuff outside the box, both literally and figuratively in terms of this match. And I was off to the races. I had all sorts of ideas of how to highlight that and how to structure it. I knew immediately that I wanted to tell an underdog story where I wanted to uh, once I found out Trick was in it, I wanted to put him at a massive disadvantage where he was like down dramatically and had to come back as late as possible. So that kind of became the story that we were trying to tell. And we had all sorts of tools to do so between the boxes, between the score, between the timer, all that stuff. The red light flashing at the end, it couldn't have gone better. I'm so happy with the way that match turned out.
It's a good one. You've worked with a lot of people over the years, a lot of big name wrestlers. Who's the coolest person you've got to work that's not somebody that not the biggest name in the world?
That isn't the biggest
Yes.
name in the
It's
world.
not, the Adam Coles, the Johnny Garganos, someone on a less known level.
There's a ton of people who are really cool to work with.
I probably could have phrased that a little better.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously loved working with Keith. He's a pretty big name though. Man, who's someone that people don't know that I wrestled too much, but I wrestled a lot. I had a really good series with Joe Gacy that I enjoyed. I had a really good series with Eddie Thorpe that I enjoyed a lot. That was probably the biggest one actually. I feuded with Eddie Thorpe for like over half a year. He's in the deadline match. He comes out from under the ring and kicks me in the head and costs me the match. That wasn't the beginning of our feud. That was like the end of our feud. We'd feuded for so long throughout that whole summer of 2023. Three? Yeah.
That sounds right.
Three going into, and the whole thing culminated on New Year's Day of 2024 with the underground match, which was awesome in my opinion. One of the best underground matches of all time. So yeah, that's probably a good a good little answer to your question.
I like that. Eddie Thorpe's not a guy that pops into my mind right away either. He's dating Dakota Kai. I think that's
Carl
about all I know
Fredericks.
about him.
Carl Fredericks. He's no longer with WWE, which is unfortunate because I thought he had tremendous upside and potential and talent. But yeah, he's wrestling on the Indies as Carl Fredericks now. So hopefully there's a rematch soon.
Yeah, hopefully that sounds like a good one. Last thing I got for you. Last thing about your career. Do you remember who your first match ever was?
Yes.
According to Cage Match, anyway, what I could find.
I don't know what it is according to Cage Match. I know my first match ever, like in front of people on a show, was against a dude who's not a wrestler anymore and hasn't been a wrestler for a long time, but his name is Chris Chambers, and he was a wrestler for Atlantic Pro Wrestling, and we did a thing called the Haverhill Kids Fest in April of 2013. And that I just happened to be there helping out, and they were like, "Hey, you want to wrestle a match?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." And my boots are in the so we went out and did like a 5 minute match with Chris Chambers. So that's my first ever match in front of like people. Maybe the first one on Cage Match because I don't know if APW would be on there. Certainly not like a weird random Kids Fest thing. I don't think so.
I don't
My
see that on there.
my guess would be maybe Chaotic Wrestling. Is that right?
First thing I see is NCW Summer.
NCW against Todd Sopel then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Glad you said that because I had no idea how to pronounce that.
Yeah. No, I remember that was my first like I don't remember if I was paid or not, but that would have been my first like actual show that I was booked for. Like they booked me to wrestle an actual match as opposed to APW where I just happened to be in the back. But yeah, NCW versus Todd Sopel probably let's call it May or June of 2013. Does that sound is that what Cage Match has?
I believe so. Yes, you got
Yeah,
it.
want to say June of 2013. Yeah. So yeah, and then yeah, so those are my first. That might be my first two matches. Yeah. So
So not everybody remembers that. We've asked every wrestler we've had on, and not all of them
I
remembers that.
have I have a ridiculously good memory when it comes to pro wrestling and a unbelievably bad memory when it comes to pretty much everything else in my life.
I'm
If
kind of the same way, and I
you
don't even wrestle.
if you talk to my wife, she's like, my real name's Chris. So she calls me Chris. Obviously, she's one of like four people on the planet who call me Chris, but like obviously she reserves that right. She's like, Chris has the worst memory in the world. He can't remember anything. He forgets to take the trash out. He forgets to feed the kids. He forgets to, just all, I forget everything, right? I forget anniversaries. I forget birthday. I forget everything in the world. But if you quiz me about like what move I hit to Todd Sopel in that match, I could tell you the finish, I could tell you the spot that I didn't like about it. It's like unbelievably good pro wrestling memory. People are always I call these massively long, intricate matches with all these back and forth things, and people are like, dude, please like talk to me out there and tell me what to do. And I'm like, yeah, of course, I'll tell you everything to do. And I very rarely forget like a spot in a match or anything like that. So yeah, I'm like Rain Man when it comes to pro wrestling and like the opposite when it comes to everything else. So maybe it's like I think part of it is my ADHD because I have like an ADHD diagnosis, and I think when people have ADHD, they become like hyper focused and fixated on things.
I have
So
it too.
for me, that's pro wrestling, and everything else just goes by the wayside. So yeah, that's kind of the life I lead, I guess.
I have that exact same thing where I get hyper fixated. I got a ton of ADHD. I get
Sure,
hyper fixated on something. It's wrestling, it's baseball, it's hockey, it's whatever's going on at the time, and I'm just locked in.
sure, yeah.
And that's
I've been the same way my whole life, and thankfully, I found pro wrestling because that's never waned for me. I've loved pro wrestling since the second I started it in 2012.
awesome. Is there anything you want to plug before we wrap this up? Anything you got coming up?
Sure,
Instagram?
yeah. I mean, I mentioned my online wrestling academy. If anybody's interested, they can visit dijakwrestling.com to check it out. We just started our my 8 week program, which meets on Thursdays. But if you're interested, we can sneak you in there, right? You've only missed 1 week though so far. So visit dijakwrestling.com, shoot me an email, dijakwrestling@gmail.com. There's that coming up. I got a big tour of Mexico coming up for CMLL. I'm excited for that. I got a big title match coming up for MLW, which is the biggest company I work for, um, collaboratively with CMLL. So yeah, I'm super excited for that to take on Matt Riddle for the MLW World
Oh
Championship
wow.
in Dallas, Texas. So yeah, I got a big what is it? August and September coming up. So I'm super excited about that.
That sounds like it's gonna be a fun match with you and Riddle, so that'll be a cool one to check out. If you
Yeah,
haven't seen any MLW stuff, it's a good time to check it out. Well, we thank you for coming on today, Dijak. It's been awesome talking to you. It's been really cool. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. We look forward to seeing you again. Hopefully, another Glory Pro show in the future.
that sounds good. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.